Medicine. You all will go to doctors at some stage, but doctors are being bullied too. In Canada at the moment, there's a push by the pro-death movement, which they call medical aid in dying, medical assistance in dying, make it sound good. No, it's killing you when you're uncentered because you realize that you're very sick. And we now, I think it's true to say, we're first or second in the world now in killing patients in Canada. That's not good news, because it's clear that some people actually get some perverted pleasure out of doing this, and they certainly become more cynical. The most egregious example I ever came across was of a professor in Belgium whose mother was at the other end of Belgium and she was seriously ill in hospital. And he was going to go and see her at the end of the week, but he got a call from the hospital saying, "Your mother asked for euthanasia, so we have done it. Will you please come and collect the body?" Can you imagine that? You couldn't write that as fiction. This is soulless bureaucracy. And what we should be struggling for at the moment is to get medicine back to its religious roots. Because doctors were honoured for centuries when we had no successful treatments to speak of. We could do some minor surgeries and the occasional heroic surgery, if you can imagine having somebody cut down on your bladder and taking a stone out in about 90 seconds without anaesthetic. They could do that. The first caesarean section, I believe, was done by a shepherd on his wife when she was in obstructed labour. And he didn't know what to say. He said, "If you were a sheep, I'd get the baby out by cutting." She said, "Then you better do it." So he did, and he got his baby out, and she survived. That's the story. I'd love, if somebody can document it for me, I'd be delighted. But it's the sort of story you wouldn't make up as fiction. Farmers know about how bodies work if they raise cattle. They know a lot about them. They may not have the kind of sophisticated presentation that education gives you, but education at the moment is in deep trouble. The only thing that appears to me to be guaranteed is that if you send your child to the current arts faculty, the normal outcome will be loss of mind, faith, and virginity in random order in the first year. Now, some people will get angry at that, say, "Well, can you give me the evidence that that doesn't happen?" And we as Christians have got to deepen our faith if we're going to survive. So, how do we do that? How do we go about it? It's not easy. First, one of the things that happened this weekend was talking to 3 of my granddaughters, one of whom is a paramedic, and the other one is doing nursing, and she's very good. She ends up in charge of the ICU quite frequently when the doctors are too busy. They leave her to get on with it. But we were talking about how the difficulties of being a Christian in that context. And I said, well, she said, "We're not allowed to talk about that." And I said, "Oh, yes, you are, but you have to do it by questions. And this is what you need to ask your doctors and what you need to teach your children to ask in these discussions. It's very easy in medical school and in residency, and I will certainly use it 10 days' time or so in Tulsa. I said to Tasha, my granddaughter, the first time you went home at the end of the day and realized if you had known a bit more than you did and had a bit more experience, somebody would be alive today who's dead. That happens to everybody in medicine because you go up through the ranks, but your experience takes time to accumulate. It takes longer now because we've shortened the number of hours a week you can work. You work any number of hours when you're in your late teens, 20s, and that's how you get experience. So 100 hours a week was the norm when I was in residency. It didn't matter to you at that age. You can do it. I had one job where basically I slept alternate nights for 6 months. with just some dosing on the other night. The body at that age can do it. And of course, the amount of experience you get is vast. Now that they've limited, I don't know what they've limited to now, but it's certainly less than half of that. So it would follow, if you're going to get the same amount of experience before you're out on your own, you don't need 2 years of residency minimum. You need at least 5. No, we are moving in that direction, but it also means you don't start earning real money for a long while. So we haven't thought this stuff through at all well. But what questions do you ask? Who do you go to when that happens? The first job I had after I got my North American equivalent of an MD and MBBS, the guy who preceded me in that job had committed suicide a few months in. So the rest of his year period, 6 month period, I can't hear, 6 month period, was done by a locum. Nobody talked to me about that. 6 of my colleagues have committed suicide during my life. The medical community has a suicide rate roughly equivalent to that of Aboriginal communities. That's not evidence of a healthy community. So, because we've lost the vocabulary, and now my granddaughters are told they can't talk about that. They can talk about what your pronouns are, but you can't talk about what your faith is. Well, you can, of course. What you do whenever you're seeing a patient and it's at all serious, you say, look, what we're talking about now is serious and you're going to need all the support you can get. Just list for me how many people you can rely on to support you through this process, or how many groups that you belong to. And of course, church comes up there. And then you can say, well, would you like your pastor to come and talk to me? And you've opened up the whole arena for discussion with that patient. You can look for the signs that are there. And of course, patients actually, they will ask you to pray with them when they know that you do that. Why would anyone say that's a bad idea? It's only because of the visceral hatred of Christianity. And that's not good news. Medicine didn't make any difference to you in terms of life expectancy. In fact, you did worse by going to the doctor until the middle of the 1800s, when epidemiology started and a cholera outbreak in London was stopped, the Broad Street pump story and all the rest. But even when, I've got named off the guy who did it at the moment to come back, but the elite amongst medicine still hung on to their humoral approach to medicine, despite the clear evidence that had been given to them that it wasn't humoral. Cholera was spread by water. It took a while. But people still went to doctors. Why? Because when you are sick and you know you're sick, you want to know what it is and what's going to happen. It causes great anxiety. So it was knowledge of prognosis, which anybody who sees sick patients all the while would have to be brain dead not to learn, oh, I've seen this before, I know what's going to happen, or this is going around at the moment, but it may be a bit rough, but you come out the other end in most cases. So you can give prognostic data to patients, and they are deeply thankful for that. That's what medicine did. And it grew out of the church, of course. Where else could it grow in the way that it did? And now, since reductionism and scientism took over, it's been a different world. And we have got to do something about it. I think the church is the place where, well, I know it's already happening a bit. It doesn't have to be that large a congregation. If you can find a young family practitioner who's willing to do cash-only service and a small retainer, and you won't have to wait 3 hours in Emerge, he'll come and see you. That model is working. Maybe I should talk about that on another occasion if I get some feedback from you saying you want that to be done. So The other thing that you can do in this context is remember to tell your own story. Everybody likes it. In season and out is what Paul called it. And that opens up doors because it's clearly authentic, it's clearly true, and it's moving. The Lord is good. And we should, as he told us, go and tell what I have done for you. So go and tell what has been good in your life. Or if you're in the stage where you're struggling, go and find someone that you know who clearly has it more together than you do and ask them why. They'll gladly tell you. Those who seek find. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it will be opened unto you. Not necessarily immediately, depending on who you are and what you are. John Wesley had to knock for about 10 years before he actually got there. And he'd become a priest before he became a Christian. God is not, as Lewis puts it in the Narnia stories, where Aslan the lion is the picture of Christ. And when Lucy asks Mrs. Beaver, is Aslan safe? Oh no, he's not safe, says Mrs. Beaver, but he is good. I hope you know him.